never believed in ghost stories, not really. Sure, I loved a good horror movie or a creepy podcast, but I always chalked it up to creative storytelling. That changed the night I decided to explore Gravenwood Forest, the so-called forest that watches. My name's Jake, by the way, 32, freelance graphic designer, and self-proclaimed skeptic. That night, though, I wasn't just a skeptic. I was an idiot. It started on a dare. My best friend Lucas had been teasing me for weeks about being all talk when it came to scary stuff. So, when he bet me $50 that I wouldn't spend a night in Gravenwood, I took him up on it. I mean, easy money, right? The forest was supposed to be cursed or haunted or whatever, but it was just a bunch of trees, no big deal. I packed light, just a flashlight, some snacks, and my phone. Lucas insisted I wear his old GoPro strapped to my chest. For proof, he said, laughing. Or so they can find your body. Hilarious. By the time I reached the trailhead, the sun was already setting. The forest loomed in front of me, dark and sprawling, its twisted branches reaching skyward like skeletal arms. The air felt colder here, sharper. I shrugged it off and started walking, my boots crunching on the gravel path. At first, it was almost peaceful. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the smell of damp earth filled my nose. I recorded a quick video for Lucas, mocking his attempt to scare me. "Look at me," I said, spinning the camera around to show the empty trail. Totally haunted. So spooky. The deeper I went, the darker it got. My flashlight carved narrow beams through the blackness, but it didn't help much. The trees seemed to press closer together, their branches tangling like a net. And the quiet. It wasn't normal quiet. It was the kind of silence that makes your ears ring, like the whole forest was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a whisper, faint, just at the edge of hearing. I froze, turning slowly, the flashlight shaking in my hand. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding thin and small. Nothing. Just the wind, I told myself. Just my imagination. But the whisper came again. Closer this time. It wasn't words exactly, more like a soft, indecipherable murmur. My heart started pounding, and I told myself to keep moving. I wasn't about to chicken out and lose $50. The trail became harder to follow, overgrown and uneven. Twice I tripped on roots and nearly fell. The whispering didn't stop. It grew louder, circling me, like voices carried on the wind. I tried to focus on the path, but every so often, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. Shadows darting between the trees, too fast to be animals. "This is fine," I muttered to myself. "Totally fine." Ahead, the trail opened into a small clearing. In the center stood an old, gnarled tree, its trunk split down the middle like a jagged wound. Something about it felt wrong. The air was heavier here, and the whispers had stopped. It was dead silent. I didn't realize how much I'd come to expect the noise until it was gone. I stepped closer to the tree, my flashlight catching something glinting on the ground. A bracelet. Silver, with tiny charms shaped like stars. I knelt to pick it up, my stomach sinking. It was tarnished, but I could tell it hadn't been there long. "Nope," I said, standing up quickly. "Time to go." As I turned to leave, a sound stopped me in my tracks. A laugh, low, guttural, and wrong. It came from the trees behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, but there was nothing there. Then the laugh came again, closer now, and I realized it wasn't alone. Other voices joined it, overlapping, whispering, laughing, crying. I ran. The flashlight bounced wildly in my hand, and the trees seemed to close in around me. Branches snagged my jacket, my hair, my pack. The whispers followed, louder and louder until they were deafening. I could hear my name now, clear and sharp, like it was being spoken right into my ear. "Jake!" I tripped and fell hard, the GoPro slamming against my chest. Scrambling to my feet, I shone the flashlight ahead, searching for the trail. But the path was gone. I was surrounded by trees, identical and unyielding. My breath came in short, panicked gasps as I spun in circles, trying to orient myself. That's when I saw it. A figure standing between the trees. At first, I thought it was a person, but then it moved. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its eyes glowed faintly, like embers in the dark. "Leave," it said, its voice layered with the same whispers that had been chasing me. "You don't belong." I stumbled backward, my legs shaking so badly I could barely stand. The figure stepped closer, and I caught a better look at its face, or lack of one. Its features were blurred, shifting, as though it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. I turned and ran blindly, crashing through the underbrush. The whispers turned to screams, a cacophony of voices shrieking in anger. My flashlight flickered, then died, leaving me in total darkness. I don't know how I made it out. 1 minute I was running, the next I was collapsing onto the gravel at the edge of the forest. When I looked back, the trees were still, silent. Whatever had chased me was gone. I ripped off the GoPro and threw it into my bag, my hands trembling. I didn't want to look at the footage. I still haven't. All I know is Lucas can keep his $50. I'm never going back into that forest, and if you're smart, you'll stay away too. Because something is watching in there, and it doesn't want you to leave. It was just a typical Friday night. Liam and I were hanging out in my room, doing what we always did, beer in hand, a cigarette dangling from my fingers, and music blasting in the background. Nothing out of the ordinary. "Man, I'm beat," Liam muttered, tossing his empty can into the corner of the room and collapsing onto the floor with a groan. "Yeah, me too," I replied, leaning back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. It's like the week never ends. We didn't need to talk about anything important. We didn't need to have some deep conversation to pass the time. We were just there, doing what we did. Liam lit up another cigarette and blew the smoke out lazily. "You're always tired these days. You good?" I shrugged, not really feeling like getting into it. "Yeah, just tired. Same old stuff." But I knew there was more to it. The dreams had been getting worse. Every night, I'd wake up, frozen in place, unable to move, with that thing in the corner of the room. But I didn't want to drag Liam into it. He'd think I was losing my mind. I glanced over at him. He had his headphones on now, scrolling through his phone, looking totally at ease, like everything was normal. I envied that. Sometimes I wished I could be that chill about everything. The night dragged on, and eventually we both crashed. I fell asleep fast, or at least I thought I did. But then it started. The usual feeling, the one I couldn't shake, the coldness in the air, the pressure on my chest, the paralysis. I woke up, but I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even blink. The room was darker than usual, and it felt wrong. I could feel it. It was in the corner of the room again. That thing, it stood there, watching me. Its shape was a blur in the shadows, but I could tell it was huge. Tall, twisted limbs, too long, too wrong, bending in ways that made my stomach twist. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its eyes on me. I knew it was waiting. And then it moved. It didn't rush. It moved slowly, deliberately, like it was savoring every moment. Its limbs dragged along the floor with that sickening creak, like bones scraping against stone. I wanted to scream, to move, but my body wouldn't listen. I was stuck. And then I saw it. It wasn't looking at me. It was looking at Liam. Liam, still sprawled out on the floor, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, completely unaware. The thing didn't hesitate. It moved toward him, and all I could do was watch. It hovered over Liam, its shadow stretching across him like it was swallowing him whole. Its claws, no, fingers, reached out and pressed into his chest. At first, there was no blood, no sound, just the awful silence that felt like it was choking me. But then, the wet sound started. The thing's fingers dug deeper, sinking into Liam's chest, like they were made of ice. At first, there was no pain, no reaction. It was like Liam didn't even feel it. His body just stayed there, limp and unaware. The thing's grip tightened, and I could feel the pressure building in the room. The air got heavier, colder. The sound of something tearing, of something being pulled out, echoed through the silence. But it wasn't gory. Not in a way that made your stomach churn. It was worse. It was unnerving. Liam didn't wake up. He didn't flinch. His chest just caved in. His body was being torn apart, but it was happening so slowly, so eerily quiet. Then the thing looked at me. It felt like its gaze pierced through me, deep into my skull, like it was waiting for something. The pressure in my chest grew unbearable. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. I felt it inside my mind. Choose. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an option. It was like the thing was offering me a decision, but there was no real choice. I tried to scream for it to stop, but I couldn't make a sound. And then, the thing made its decision. Liam's body stopped moving. His chest was torn open, but there was no blood, no mess. It was like all the life, all the humanity had been drained out of him. And then, just as quickly as it happened, it was over. The thing was gone. I woke up, for real this time. I sat up, gasping for air, my heart racing. My room was warm again. No more cold air pressing in on me. No more shadows. But Liam wasn't there. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. I looked over at the spot where he'd been sleeping, but his stuff was gone. His jacket, his shoes, everything. I grabbed my phone, tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. I ran over to his house. His mom answered the door, looking confused when I asked where he was. "Liam, who's that?" she asked, frowning. "Your son. Where is he?" Her face went blank. "We don't have a son named Liam." I couldn't breathe. What the hell was happening? I went back to his house, checked his room. Nothing. His bed was made. There were no signs of him anywhere. I asked people at school, teachers, friends, but no one knew who Liam was. No one remembered him. It was like he'd never existed. I was starting to lose it. I couldn't understand any of it. And then, that's when it hit me. Had Liam ever really been my friend? Had he ever been real? What if he was just part of whatever game the demon was playing with me? What if he was never a real person at all? I stood there, in the middle of his empty room, trying to make sense of everything. But the air grew heavy again, that same coldness from before. I turned around, but there was no one there. No one. The room was quiet. Too quiet. But then I heard something. A voice. It wasn't Liam's. It wasn't anything I recognized. And it wasn't coming from outside the room. I was still in the nightmare. I hadn't woken up at all. The thing in the corner of the room shifted, and I knew. I was next. You ever worked late at night, thinking you're the only person in the building? Yeah, I used to love that quiet. No distractions, no coworkers breathing down my neck. Just me, the hum of my laptop, and the weird comfort of being alone. That was my routine. I liked it. At least I did until one night. One night that still makes my stomach churn every time I think about it. It started like any other late shift. I worked, at this small marketing firm. The office was on the top floor of this old building downtown. Kind of run down, but it had this charm to it, you know? I'd stayed late to finish a campaign that was due in the morning. Midnight rolled around, and I was in my zone. Lo-fi beats on my headphones, a half-empty coffee mug beside me. The office was dark except for the glow from my computer screen and a few dim hallway lights. Perfect. Then I felt it. That weird prickly sensation, like the air had changed. At first, I shrugged it off. Maybe the AC kicked on, but as I kept typing, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I paused my music and listened. Nothing. Just the hum of the vending machine down the hall. But that's when I heard it. A faint, deliberate tap, tap, tap. It wasn't random, you know. It was rhythmic, like footsteps. But they were off, like something heavy was dragging with each step. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. I stood up, my chair creaking in the silence, and peeked down the hallway. It was empty, just the usual rows of cubicles fading into shadow. I laughed nervously, chalking it up to my tired brain playing tricks on me. Late nights do that to you, right? Still, I couldn't shake the unease. I sat back down, put my headphones on, and tried to focus, but the sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. Closer this time. I yanked off my headphones. My heart was racing now. I stood up again, this time walking toward the hallway like an idiot in a horror movie. "Hey, if this is some kind of prank, it's not funny," I called out. My voice echoed, hollow and small. There was no response, just silence. I turned to head back to my desk, but I froze. At the far end of the hallway, barely visible in the dim light, was a figure. It looked human at first, a tall, hunched silhouette. But as my eyes adjusted, I noticed details that didn't make sense. Its legs bent backward, ending in hooves. Its arms were too long, almost dragging on the floor. And its head had these massive curling horns. It didn't move. It just stood there, staring at me with these faintly glowing eyes. I don't know how long I stood there, rooted in place. My body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. Finally, it tilted its head, and in this low, guttural voice it said, "You shouldn't be here." That snapped me out of it. I turned and ran back to my desk, my heart pounding in my ears. I grabbed my bag, not caring about my laptop or anything else, and bolted for the stairs. I didn't even wait for the elevator. As I ran down the stairwell, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. Not on the floor above me, but echoing through the stairwell. It was following me. I didn't look back. I just kept running, my footsteps slamming against the concrete. By the time I reached the ground floor, my lungs were burning and my legs felt like jelly. I burst out into the street, gasping for air. But here's the thing. When I looked back at the building, the lights on the top floor were still on. And in one of the windows, I saw it. That thing. It was watching me. I didn't wait to see what it would do. I ran until I couldn't anymore, finally collapsing on a bench a few blocks away. My mind was racing. What the hell was that? The next day, I didn't go back to work. I couldn't. I sent an email saying I was quitting effective immediately. I figured that was the end of it, but it wasn't. A few weeks later, I was scrolling through local news when a headline caught my eye. "Mysterious deaths linked to vacant office building." My stomach dropped. I clicked the article and my blood went cold. The building I had worked in? It had been empty for over a year. The company I thought I worked for had moved to a new location months before I was even hired. I don't know who or what I was working for that night, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone in my apartment, I hear it again. That tap, tap, tap. And I'm terrified that one day I'll turn around and it'll be there, waiting,